Welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine, and I'm joined today by my special guest for a second straight week, Jerry Cave, who I'm going to label today as a Trump surrogate for Maryland. How about
Thank
that?
you. That's a great thing to call me, and thanks for having me back. That doesn't happen often.
Yeah,
I don't
I
get
think
invited back.
you passed the test last week, so we're going to try it again.
Fantastic.
If you pass, we may have you back in the future. All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about things that are in the news. We'll talk about Baton Rouge. We talked about it a little bit last week, and you gave some background there. But, a lot of the discussion really is about Obama. Where is Obama? What's going on there? Trump has visited, and where's Hillary? And how does this look? I mean, what's your take here?
The real villain in this is the media. Shocking. We're at accuracy of media, and we've determined that the villain is the media, but that is true, and there are people in Louisiana feel that way. What they've realized, and they're trying to tell the rest of the country, is that the media only covers the things that support their agenda. So their agenda was to demonize Bush during Katrina and not do it to Obama during this tragedy, which is on the same magnitude. I mean, it's a once-in-a-thousand-year storm. You've got 20,000 homes that are underwater with no flood insurance. I mean, this is devastating. And these people are not sitting around on their duff like some of the people in New Orleans were. They're actually getting up, fixing it, tearing the drywall out, doing everything they can, but they need federal assistance. They need the help of other people. But the media has not made a point that Obama didn't show up. They haven't made a point that Hillary didn't show up. They tried to demonize Trump, and he cut him off at the pass by coming down with a truck full of goodies, making a donation. And the people in Louisiana really appreciated Trump coming down.
Yeah, well, I thought this was interesting because the governor, at first was, he really kind of wanted Trump to stay away, and then he seemed to walk that back a little bit. And then Obama's take on this, or at least what I've seen from the White House, was that, well, he didn't want to come in and be a distraction during the relief efforts. And I haven't heard, anything from Hillary's camp, so I really don't know what the heck they're doing all that, except maybe it's all part of their silent strategy. We're just going to let Trump do whatever. But this is probably a good thing for Trump, bad thing for Obama, and the White House doesn't seem to be too concerned about the optics.
Obama's not running for office anymore. He doesn't care. He's like Tommy Lee Jones in that movie, The Fugitive. The guy says, "I didn't kill my wife." He says, "I don't care." So Obama doesn't care. Hillary is terrible in public. That's not a friendly place for her to go. And the governor, who is a real piece of work, I mean, he came out to demonize Trump, and Trump cut him off at the path. Everything he said for Trump not to do, Trump went and did it well, and the people appreciate it. I think that in this election, people will vote for Trump, certainly in Louisiana. I don't think they'll re-elect that governor again, to be honest with you.
So one and done for the governor. Well, that would be something. That would probably be good for Louisiana. Though I would like to see Hillary come down and wear some hip waders.
The problem with that is that's not something you can unsee.
That's exactly right. And then once it gets out there in the social media universe, we're done. It'll be memes all the way through.
And that could diminish ratings for television and social media indefinitely. It would be so bad optics.
I'm glad we agree on that. All right. Now, one thing we want to talk about last week, or you want to really talk about last week, and you had this, was kind of the Trump and Clinton campaign strategies. You're a long-time, salesman. You've been on radio. You've been doing a lot of things in your career. So why don't you go ahead and break this down a little bit more in terms of how the campaigns and their strategies were going?
Okay. The Democrats, as has been said before, play chess. We play checkers. They've had a strategy in place for a long time. Their strategy in the last campaign was to anticipate Romney and demonize Wall Street and him being their poster child. This time, they didn't know who we would have, so their default demonization is race. So that's where Black Lives Matter and all this comes up. So Hillary has all of the tailwind in her favor. A very successful thing to demonize Republicans as racist, which disqualifies us from the black vote and even from other minority votes, even though these people are culturally and conservative with us. But we have been branded this way, so that's brilliant. The education and entertainment's at her back. The main thing is she's entirely unelectable based on a dishonesty that gets disclosures that happen for the Clinton cash cow all the time. But there's two things going in her favor. Number one, the media just won't cover it adequately, won't hold her accountable. And the second thing is the size and scope of her dishonesty is so big, the American mind just goes, that just can't be true. but it is. So all she has to do is play defense, delay any prosecution until she becomes president, and then she can bury it, distract people from her dishonesty, which the media is doing for her, and then all she has to do is destroy the brand of Trump to make him unqualified, unacceptable, dangerous, or as it were. And that's her strategy. She's on it, working it brilliantly. It's perfectly implemented. His strategy is different. He is twofold. He is more like a sales thing. He has to, like a comparative selling, he has to diminish her and make himself not acceptable, not preferable. He has to make the election of Donald Trump a priority, because there are objections that will not go away. He has a speaking manner that many women do not like. He has said things that are brutally honest and people don't like the truth. And he has put forth plausible solutions that require decisions that impact people positively and negatively. Democrats don't do that. They just come out with a feel-good statement and that's it. So his job is harder. And the other thing is, he has to do it all by himself. He doesn't have the education, the entertainment, and the media tailwind behind him singing his tune. He is out there all by himself, and the GOP, many in the GOP are like Switzerland. They're just being neutral and sitting this one out. So Trump is a one-man show with a little bit of support doing this. But the deal is, and it was written up in articles in there's an article out today where the people in the suburbs and the rural and the people that are for Trump are for him, not for themselves, not for him, but for their children and grandchildren. And that's very powerful.
All right. Now, you mentioned something in your summation here of on the Clinton campaign and talking about race. This is something that has bothered me for a long time, which is that the Democrats have consistently played the race card against the Republicans, and the Republicans don't seem to understand how to react to that, or they don't fight back on that. I mean, what is the deal?
This is the key issue with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party would be like John F. Kennedy were it not for this. Now, I don't disagree with a whole lot of things with JFK, except a few, and certainly his deportment. But they've turned into the Teddy Kennedy Party. And the reason they have is because they have these enormous voting blocks that issues and how they legislate don't mean anything. Now, on race, it's fabulous. They have, I mean, it's fabulous. I mean, their strategy and execution is fabulous. When they, when they could keep blacks from voting, they were racist as can be overtly. When Johnson figured out they couldn't do that anymore, he then flipped it. So all of the things that were done to black folks, primarily, that's the highest profile, were all done by Democrats. Every single Jim Crow politician was a Democrat. And now they're playing the reverse side of that card. The problem with the Republicans is they don't have any guts. They don't come out and say it, and they're afraid they will not be articulate enough on the issue, and will have the bottom ripped out of their boat going through a shoal, because if they say the wrong sentence, the wrong phrase, the wrong word, it'll be repeated indefinitely. Donald Trump's the only guy that's had the courage to do that. A few other people have, but until they destroy, and the irony is, you look in the Hispanic community, they're culturally and fiscally more conservative than the black community. And I don't know if you know anybody that's from the Asian American community, Don.
I might know a few.
All of the ones I've bumped into are more fiscally and culturally conservative than I am, and I didn't think that was possible. But we have been branded as unacceptable for them to vote. This also costs us 10 to 15% of the white vote, because who's going to vote for a party that's branded as racist? So it's very simple. The talk show host can't do it. The columnists can't do it. The candidates themselves, and I don't mean just one guy running for president. I mean all of them. And I mean everybody who's in the Senate, running for the Senate and in Congress and in the governor's mansions and state and legislatures. They need to come out and speak to this issue, because the facts are on our side. We've been on the right side of all the civil rights issues, and the number 1 and 2 of those are jobs and education, and the Democratic Party has a terrible, terrible track record, as Trump has pointed out, in the inner cities of this country for the last 50 years.
Yeah, but you certainly won't notice it if you're reading or watching the media or listening.
No, but the people that can break through this are the senators, the congressmen, and they can do it, but they have been cowards and inarticulate, and it's not that hard to do. I just did it, and it really is so easy a caveman can do it. So they ought to be able to do it too.
How many times are you going to use that line?
indefinitely. Look, it's lasted a long time.
Okay, all right. So, as we talk about the campaign, so there was, we had a little bit of a shakeup last week, and now we had, since we last talked, Paul Manafort has left. I don't think this surprises either one of us because he kind of was put into that squeeze with Kellyanne Conway, getting promoted in essence. So he's gone. Do you think that's a good or bad thing at this point?
If you are associated with the Trump campaign, you have to be like Caesar's wife, and that is beyond reproach, appearances and everything. So whatever he had going on with this thing over in Russia, boom, he's got to go. And he is expendable. Everybody is expendable. Even Trump is expendable if it came down to it and we had to have Pence be president. But so Manafort had to go for that reason. And you can already see a different tone, more professionalism, better messaging, and that's Kellyanne.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the problem, is that Manafort was becoming a distraction. He was becoming a story that was taking away from the campaign. If you have to keep dealing with that issue, you can't talk about your issues, when it was perfect fodder for the Democrats. So, whether or not he, stepping aside, leaving the campaign, whatever the circumstances were, it was better for the campaign to see him go so that they can move forward.
He fit in between and didn't accomplish either thing. He needed to be big enough, important enough, gutsy enough to be able to give his opinion to Donald Trump and have him take it. He can't, but Bannon can. And we needed somebody who was more proficient on the logistics. An expression in the military is amateurs talk strategy and professionals talk logistics. You got to be able to get your troops and material there. And that's where she comes in. And you can already see the effect in a week. So great moves, and it shows the guts of Donald Trump to come in, analyze the situation, listen to it, take a decision, put new people in charge, change the tone, and it starts to work. That's what a guy who's been successful has done.
Okay. Now let's talk about the polls, because there's a lot of talk out there about, are these polls accurate? Are they rigged? Where are we going with that? I mean, whereas before the convention, or I guess I should say maybe right after the Republican convention, Trump looked like he was doing pretty well. Then, the Clinton comes on and she gets her convention bump, and a lot of other things happen, and then she takes probably an even bigger lead than she had before the Republican convention. And that lead doesn't seem to have dissipated. Virtually every poll, there's some in between, have given her fairly big leads across the board, and particularly in the battleground states. We're seeing that they've pulled back. The campaign has pulled back. The Clinton campaign has pulled back on advertising. They've become extremely confident they're going to walk away from this. But in your opinion, are these polls? Are they accurate? I mean, are they going after the right people? Are we going to be able to rely on this? I mean, this is such a different election year. I don't know if I have enough confidence in the polls to say it is a moment in time. It is talking to a bunch of people, but are those the people that are actually going to vote in November?
You have to start at the very base when you look at statistics. And I've spent my lifetime looking at statistics, both in broadcasting and on the internet, and actually even took statistics in college. So the first thing is you got to look at the sample base, and these sample bases are very small. You're looking at a sample base of 1,000 people for a country of 320 million and voted. That's crazy. The other thing is you got to look at how they parcel it out. So, and who does it? So the media does it. And oh my gosh, the media that hates Donald Trump, that has abandoned their journalistic ethics, that their polls would be inaccurate and in favor of Hillary Clinton is shocking to me. Polls have been getting less accurate over time. It's harder to reach people. They don't have landlines. The one on on MSNBC this morning, they have a poll showing some results, and from SurveyMonkey. It's like, okay, let's email some people and see what they say. I mean, really unscientific. I remember doing focus groups, and you'd ask people certain questions, and they would, like you say, do you want to hear a wider variety of music on your radio station or the same old songs? And they'd always say, I have a wider variety of music. And if you did that, your ratings collapsed. So what people say, what they mean, and that's particularly true, you're right, in this election, because a lot of people are for Donald Trump. They just don't want everybody to know about it. So I don't think the polls are accurate. I'm not Pollyanna and say, oh, they're all lying and Trump is going to do much better. But you got to look at more in the polls. Look at the events. He sells out with thousands of people. You get outside of the city and you see Trump signs everywhere. So we're not going to know until the election poll.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true to a large extent. I mean, there has been a lot of people talking about the large crowds that Trump keeps on attracting, probably larger than anything that Clinton and Kaine have been able to turn out.
That is the greatest understatement you have ever said in my presence.
And his social media presence. Now the thing is that you have to translate those people to votes. I discount the social media from a voter perspective. I mean, I think it's great to have that effect, but Trump as a brand already had a certain number of followers and things like that before he even announced. People I think they're there because they like that. I don't think that you see a lot of social media people that are actually going to be voters, but it is trying to see, can you translate all those people that are showing up to these rallies and can you get them there to vote? And one of the other quirks in the system, I think too, that makes all of this hard to predict is that we're going to be coming up very soon on early voting issues, and there are states that do I think vote by mail. There's a lot of things that go on in certain areas where when you're down to the last 30 days of a campaign, which can be critical. Some people will have already voted, and we won't know how they voted until I mean, I guess they count those votes, but so they'll be tabulated and ready to go on election night when they're ready to release. But only the people who've been counting them know exactly where the trend is. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out. The media could get a very big wake-up call and a very big surprise, come November. When the election is over, they're right now. Obviously, they're all predicting, Trump was going to lose by a wide margin. But you see in the media too that there are liberals, Democrats that are worried that the Clinton camp has become too complacent. Pulling the ads out and everything like that. And it is a little bit curious too. Is the Trump campaign hasn't really put a lot of money into ads, but the question there too is that, once again, in this election year, with social media, with all the things, with all the earned media that Trump gets, do the old rules apply? Do you really need to go out so far in advance with the ads? Don't people remember things closer to the election than for that? I mean, we still have, 75 days or something like that?
77 days.
So, you have that. I mean, if you do the ads now, do they have as much effect as they would if you start kind of pounding away at the last 2 to 3 weeks?
You bring up a lot of good points, and I'm hoping to be able to address them. So first thing is this is a 4 or 5 state election. If we win the traditional red states and then also win the winnable Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio, then we need 17 votes. It's not going to come out of Colorado. These are the only numbers that matter, the Electoral College. It's not going to come out of Colorado or Virginia. They got a better ground game, and they're going to win those states. And this is why I have liked Trump from the start, is he's talking about the Rust Belt and blue-collar jobs. So he needs to pick off 1 or 2 in the Rust Belt. It could be Pennsylvania, which is often considered fool's gold for us. But that's what it's going to come down to. Now, Hillary, I don't think Hillary is being complacent. They might have some change of what they're doing, but not complacent. But I'll tell you what's interesting. What I am seeing in social media is I'm seeing an incredible amount of enthusiasm that's matched in the events. And I remember in the last week of the Hogan campaign for governor in Maryland, I would talk to people, and I saw people who I never thought would vote Republican, and people who were complacent about voting. They're like, I'm voting, and I'm bringing all my family. I got my kids back from college. So I'm feeling that for Trump. So my intuition is telling me that. But it's clouded by what I'd like to see happen. So it's we won't know till game time.
All right. Well, another topic I want to address here too is Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. Now, one thing that's interesting about when you look at the polls and things that are going on here, this is also why I question the accuracy of the polls, because when they go from a 2-person poll to a 4-person poll, including Stein and including Gary Johnson, what we see is, Gary Johnson's numbers are in the low double digits, 10, 12, 15%. I think even Jill Stein's are 5, 6%. who in their right mind believes that that actually will happen come November, that many people will actually go to either one of those two candidates? But I thought one of the things about Jill Stein that intrigued me was that, she's not a big fan of Hillary, and she said that she couldn't, she have a hard time sleeping at night if Hillary's elected. So there's still a lot of that, anti-sentiment. I mean, I haven't seen anything of Bernie Sanders. He's kind of disappeared a little bit on this, but there is this undercurrent of people who are on the liberal left side that aren't crazy about Hillary. Question is, are they going to vote at all, or will they wind up voting for a Johnson or a Stein?
You bring up a great point. There's a number of people that are marking them down on the polls right now, but when it comes right down to what they want the future of this country to be, are they going to throw their vote away like that? And anybody that votes for either one of those two are not only throwing their votes away because it's going to be Hillary or Trump, but if you look at the policies of those two, I mean, the libertarian guy is really out there. I mean, it doesn't have any substance to his things at all. So you bring up really good points. The one other thing I wanted to mention about the early situation is, going back to the Hogan-O'Malley thing again, was O'Malley won that election in the summer. So when O'Malley beat Ehrlich 4 years previous, he beat him in the summer by being able to get out there with his message, and Ehrlich was dark because he didn't have the money yet. He still had the primary to contend with, and he got beat early. And I think some of that has happened to Trump this summer. But if you take a look at it, in the last 3 weeks, Donald Trump has been pummeled with tens of millions of dollars of advertising. Every gun in the media arsenal has turned on him negatively, and they can't give him a kill shot. So if he can get through this, he can get through anything. And there's more cards to be played in this that I think could help Donald Trump.
I think that's a good point too, because I think the media has been going after Trump very heavily, but I really haven't seen much of a shift in the polling in that sense. I mean, it's the only thing one of the things we have to go on is that if he's being pummeled as much in the media, you would expect him to really radically drop. I mean, and he's holding steady if he's not maybe even gaining in some areas as a result. So it's backfiring, I guess, and we can say on that. Now, I want to go on to the other news that's out there is all this stuff about the Clinton Foundation and donations and things like that. And what's been interesting to me is that as much as the liberal media, is not for Trump, and they will probably vote for Hillary, though some of them will be doing so unenthusiastically, is that we had the Boston Globe this past week come out and make a declaration about the donations that are going into the Clinton Foundation. And one of the things it said here in the editorial was that the foundation should remove a political and actual distraction and stop accepting funding. If Clinton is elected, the foundation should be shut down. And then goes on to say, but as long as either the Clintons is in public office or actively seeking it, they should not operate a charity too. The Clintons themselves seem to realize that. This is a problem. I mean, and I'm seeing a lot of discussion about this, is that, why are they running this foundation while she was Secretary of State? Why was there still involvement there? And now she's running for president, and they're still taking in money. I mean, Bill Clinton has said that, if she's elected, we're going to stop taking foreign money. We're going to stop doing this. But, those emails came out. Let's talk about that.
Okay. She's guilty of sin. You cannot deny that. There's just so much evidence. Now, what you read was brilliant because, again, you got to look at not what people say, but what they mean. So the Huffington Post and the Washington Post and now the Globe have all put out articles about how they don't like what's happened and they think she should shut it down. Not because it's wrong. She shouldn't be prosecuted because it's wrong. If she shouldn't be doing it as president, she shouldn't have been doing it as Secretary of State. They want her to shut it down to make her more electable to be president. You can see right through this with them. And even Colin Powell came out and said, hey, look, you're trying to pin this rap on me. Now, I'll tell you, there's another group of people that has not been talked about, and they have been injured. I'm not a lawyer, but one of the things I think you have to show is injury. And they've been injured by this. And those are all the countries, people, entities, businesses that have been extorted by the Clintons and had to pay this extortion money to do business. And they shouldn't have to pay that money if they have a legitimate reason to be in front of the State Department, or they shouldn't be doing that business at all and shouldn't be involved. So they want to have this thing shut down too. Look, it saved them a lot of money. The key is the scale of this thing is so massive that I think the American mind really has a hard time getting around and identifying it as dishonest. There, it's like, how could anything this big go on? And but it has, and the media has revealed itself.
Right, and you mentioned Colin Powell and what he had said. I mean, what I thought was interesting here is that it's like Hillary kept, she said, Colin Powell and I, we're on the same page, on this. He told me this, and, Colin Powell comes out and says, look, I told her about, what I was doing a year before. I mean, she'd already been using the server for a year before I even talked with her. And it's very clear that with Colin Powell, what he did was that he never had a private server, in his house. He was very careful about how he separated classified and unclassified, personal, all those kinds of things. That's not something that Hillary. This whole thing was for Hillary was to hide, to cover up things that they were going to be doing. There's no transparency here. It's just really funny to see that she pushed Colin Powell to the point that Colin Powell's like, you're not going to sully my reputation anymore. I'm going to come out here and do it. Now, here's a guy who voted for Obama twice. Did she think that he was going to provide cover for her? Wrong. I mean, she was dead wrong.
I got a question for you. Why did he wait so long? If it was wrong yesterday, it was wrong months ago, year ago, when all of this came up. And Colin Powell, if he had been courageous and smart, he would have shut her down on this issue months ago instead of waiting till yesterday. So I'm very disappointed in him.
Well, I think, and to an extent, I think maybe he was willing to go along with it for a while because he thought, well, how many times is she going to say this? I mean, how many times is she going to drag? But I think he got to the point, you start seeing how big this scandal is. It just continues to balloon.
Yeah, but when you come down to ethics, Don, it's not a question how big is it. The ethics is that his position that he stated yesterday is true if there was one email, if there was one scintilla of impropriety going. If there was no impropriety, it was still not accurate the way she was positioning it, and he should have come out with that right away.
I agree with it. I think he should have come out that with a lot earlier.
What you're saying is, Colin Powell doesn't have a problem with it until it looks like he's going to go down too. Well,
that's the way a lot of these guys act, though.
That's a real problem in Washington.
It is. All right. Well, we're just about against the time here. So, what's your final take?
Well, we have a lot of problems, and most of them are your fault, Don, because the American people are pretty smart. When you give them the information, they'll come to the right decision. But the problem is you and your father started this fantastic organization with the best mission I've ever heard called Accuracy in Media, but you haven't been able to get them to be accurate. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not blaming you. You're up against all of them. But the media is lying to us, and they're lying by what they say and what they don't say, trying to distract us from the truth, what they do and don't cover, Baton Rouge versus New Orleans, Bush versus Obama. Hillary Clinton has not, I feel like ending this like Walter Cronkite used to end the news. And there's been 264 days since we've had our hostages in Iran. Well, it's been 262 days since Hillary Clinton has had a press conference because she doesn't want to answer any questions, even from a compliant media that is subservient to her. So the problem we have is the media. We have a one-man band, Donald Trump, trying to save us from that. And if he does it, he is going to destroy their lockhold on the American public and destroy this whole thing about us being racist, which would be the best thing that could ever happen to this country.
All right. And I'm going to do yet another sports-related thing. The Olympics have now concluded. I had a lot of doubts in terms of how this was going to go, where Rio had a lot of problems in preparing for the Olympics, and there were still problems going on throughout the Olympics, whether or not there were thefts and some other things going on there. But by and large, it turned out really well. I'm very proud of Team USA. They, except for maybe one or two exceptions, they held their head high. They did a great job and showed, just reminded us of what a great country we are, and the things that we can accomplish when we put our mind to it. My hat's off to all the athletes in the U.S. as well as around the world, and I can't wait for the Tokyo Games 4 years hence. And so that's it for another edition of Bias Buzz, and see you next Wednesday.